Welcome back to another episode of Casa De Confidence. What if nothing is wrong with you after all, my friends? We have been taught that to fear the in between seasons of life, and if nothing is exactly wrong or who we are or what's going on, we start to catastrophize that there's going to be some sort of failure. But my guest today, Amy Stone, is flipping the script on what it means to be a thriving adult in a constantly shifting world. She is a seven-time Ironman finisher, sourdough baker, mom, stepmom, coach, and the creator of the Art of Imperfect Adulting, a movement and podcast that champions those quietly navigating the messy, beautiful middle of life. So today we're talking about the overlooked transitions, the ones that warmed us about it, and the radical idea that maybe, just maybe, we're being the people who are a work in progress. And that's exactly the point, right? We are works in progress. So, welcome to the show, Amy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, another Miami person. We were
That's
just
right.
chatting about Miami and my old stomping grounds, and I've enjoyed getting to know you and just chatting so much lately that it's been great. And I know I'm going to have a great cup of coffee or something when I visit Miami next.
You betcha.
Yeah. Now, you talk about the in between moments and the transitions that aren't big and flashy, but deeply personal, felt. Um, why do you think these moments are so hard for people to name, let alone navigate?
That's, I think, a big question, for sure. I think there's definitely a piece of it that we start out our lives thinking that there is a set path that we're supposed to
Hmm.
follow. And so there's a variety of things that we have an instruction book. It's like we're going to go to
Yeah.
school, we're going to do the
Right.
best we can. We're going to get a job, we're going to get promoted, we're going to get a paycheck, we're going to take vacations, we're going to have a relationship,
Hmm.
maybe we're going to make a family, we're going to get a house. We're going to do all of those things. We're going to, retire, which seems almost like it's imaginary
Hmm.
first,
Yeah, it's an
but
imaginary thing now.
right. And then, and the implication is that if you follow those set of instructions, that happiness and fulfillment just comes along the way.
Hmm.
And the experience of what we have that actually happens to us doesn't kind of match
Hmm.
up with what we thought would happen. And there's
Mm.
a million different ways that
Yeah.
can happen, small ways and big ways in life. But just like when you go to a restaurant and you order a Caesar salad and it comes and it has like strawberries in it or something, and you're like, wow,
No.
why is this this
Right.
is not what I
This is
expected,
not what I
right?
expected. Right. Right.
This
Right.
is not what
Yeah.
I expected. That sort of like unsettled feeling of confusion, if you
Mhm.
have that same sort of experience in a bunch of different things in your life at the same time and all over that, it doesn't feel great. And it's very easy for people to turn the lens in on ourselves and think that the reason it doesn't feel good, the reason I'm unhappy with this salad is because I must have made a mistake ordering it. I must have
Mm.
read the
Yeah.
menu wrong. I must have
Right.
told
Right.
the
Right.
waitress the wrong thing, right? And when we talk about a salad, no big deal, send it back, get a
Hmm.
replacement. But when
Right.
you're talking about the things that are foundational for life, many, many people are running around thinking, I must have done this wrong because
Hmm.
clearly
Hmm.
everybody is having a better experience than me.
Right.
And so those are some of the things that I think happen to us. And I think that life moves fast is the other thing.
Yeah.
And so when you're in the middle of doing something like,
Mhm.
living,
Yeah.
running your life, keeping your job, there's not a whole lot of extra time to, sit down and figure out like, well, whose fault is it that I don't love all of this stuff?
Right,
Like what,
right.
yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have, fought my whole life to be in the moment because it's become very easy when this, when that, right? In living in the expectation of my life is going to be better when has really been one of these burdens that I've carried because it takes my eyes away from the beauty of what is happening right now.
Right.
And I've learned that it's not always going to be how you expected it to be. And if you just enjoy the moment now, when you get to the thing, right, you're not going to be disappointed. You're actually going to be enjoying that moment. And that's
Yeah.
something that, again, continues to be part of the work that I do for myself. But I think
Yeah.
that you have said that the work that you're doing in your community is not a self-help, it's a collective wisdom. What is the difference between advice and wisdom, and why does that distinction matter in adulting?
So I think it matters kind of a lot. Because one of the things that I have grown to believe is almost a myth, even though that's kind of a strong word about it.
Mhm.
But this idea that somebody else out there should be telling us how to live our lives, that there is an expert with a
Mhm.
title and a
Oh, yeah.
degree in an office that will
Yeah.
answer the questions and fix the problems for you, can take us down a path
Mhm.
that is not helpful. Right?
Mhm.
Just is not helpful. Now, that's not to say that that's not always the solution. When you have strep throat, you have to go to the doctor and get the prescription so that you can get, that's the way that works, right?
Mhm.
I'm all for experts and I really
Mhm.
respect people who have advanced degrees. But there's the other side of it, which is that the wisdom of having somebody in a community like some in a community that is varied and mixed, that has a
Mhm.
breadth of experience and people, can really pay off. Because, and I'll use your if, like, not now, I'm going to wait.
Mhm.
The idea of deferring joy until later, right, is one
Mm.
of those things that is sometimes very true. It takes
Mhm.
6 months to train for an Ironman. It's a
Yep.
great feeling to finish it, right?
Mhm.
On the other hand, if you've been planning a trip to the Grand Canyon for 20 years of your life and you're putting it off because you think you want an upgrade for the flight or such and such is going
Mhm.
to happen, to be in a room with someone who says, "Hey, listen, you might want to do that while you're 50 and not when you're
Yeah.
65, because it's a
Mhm.
tough walk."
That's right,
Right?
100%,
And
100%.
so collective wisdom of, like, this is how I did it,
Mhm.
this is how so and so, and so I used a vacation example. It can be anything. Standing in a room in a coffee shop and somebody's like,
Mhm.
"Hey, you know what? If your husband is 63, he needs to fill out this form for
Yeah.
Medicaid." Life is
Yep.
complicated and we need the resources of people around us
Mhm.
who are willing to share their experiences in a helpful and not bossy way. Because when we get advice or suggestions from experts, it's
Mhm.
instructions. Like, when you pay
Yeah.
somebody to tell you what to do, you want to do what they tell you to do, and they
Mhm.
expect you to do what they tell you to do.
Yep.
And that's different from being in a collective where it's like, "Hey, we're going to talk about vacations,"
Mhm.
and people are like, I love to vacation in this way. And maybe you don't like to vacation that way, but that's okay. It's like, "Oh, great.
Yeah.
I'm never going to do that, but I love that story."
I love that story.
Yes.
This is so good that you're unpacking this as a podcaster. I tend to bring experts, but I also love to bring the individuals who have the life experience, that inner wisdom. They've been through those steps that maybe we're aspiring or dreaming of doing, but somehow, something is keeping us back. And I'm hoping that through the combination, right?
Yes.
Obviously, we want to have best practices, but we also want to hear the stories and know that it's possible for us. Because sometimes we think, oh, that person has it all together. And because they have it all together, I don't identify with that. But I
Sure.
know that that's an epidemic. When I was in corporate, I want to raise my hand. I was the person that you saw from the outside, had it all together. But on the inside, there was a lot of things that I was paying, that I was doing, that I was really not nobody would have known, right? What
Sure.
was going on the inside. What are the hidden cost of holding it together?
Yeah. The hidden costs of holding it together. Absolutely. I am hearing that a lot on my show when people are
Mhm.
talking about things that they're coming forward to tell a story, and many times, people are saying, if you had known me, you never would have known." And
Mm,
so maybe it's depression.
yeah.
Maybe it's, I was in a relationship that I was staying in, that everybody thought we were happy,
Mhm.
it looked good from the outside, but I felt lonely and isolated, or it was
Mm,
horrible on the inside.
yeah.
I think the hidden costs are I think the hidden costs can be a lot of things. I think that it leads to a sense of detachment to your own identity.
Mhm.
because you're showing up as something that is not in alignment with who you are. And so, and we all have different personas, right? So like
Mhm.
if you work in an office, right, the person who shows up for work is not the same person who goes to happy hour. That's
Yeah.
just the
Oh,
way the world works,
100%.
right? And that's
Yeah.
okay. When you walk into a bank to ask for a loan, you get dressed up to do that. When you're
Mhm.
trying to get your kids into preschool, you get dressed up to walk into the office, right? And so
Mhm.
that's not what we're talking about, right? But we're talking about when you just really don't feel good about the things that you're doing for a chunk of your day. And I think the most risky part of that is when you find yourself in a situation where you're not sure if or how to bring it back into alignment. Like,
Mhm.
do you actually have the ability to make the choices and make the changes? Do you feel trapped? And I think that those things, and that can be in a business sense, like you were saying, in a job, it can be in a caregiver sense with, parents or family or children. It can be in a relationship sense, like you've aged out of a relationship or
Mhm.
changed. It can be in a friend group. Honestly, it can be
Yeah.
your social group is geared around kayaking and you've decided you never want to kayak ever again in your life, but
Mhm.
you don't know who you'll hang out with ever again. And then
Yeah.
you end up with really kind of a silent identity crisis.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
if I'm not this, or if
Mhm.
other people think I'm this and it doesn't feel right, then who am I really? And that
Yeah.
that is that is a lot to hold on to.
Oh, 100%. I know that, for many years, I was in this corporate environment. I love what I did. I was very good at what I did. And yet I started to shift.
Right.
And all of a sudden I thought, ugh, the thought of having to put really, really high heels on and that power suit, and I I don't mind it, but it wasn't me every day, and I wanted something different. I wanted something more, but the expectation, this is who I've been. This is the identity. This is the people who
Right.
I surround myself with. This is where I gain that feedback that I'm great, right? Because I'm very successful at what I'm doing. That
That's
was
right.
really hard to kind of give up, and it was sort of this attachment to it.
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
it,
Yeah.
it's it's okay to give ourselves permission to say, you know what, that doesn't fit anymore. Why would we walk around with clothes that don't fit? Why do we do it with a life that doesn't fit?
No, I absolutely agree. But I think that giving yourself permission can be really hard because the first 20, 25 years of our life,
Mhm.
those permission slips are written by other people.
Mhm. Yeah,
When we move from school to
true.
school, the teacher gives us a grade. They move us to the next stage. There are things that we do. We apply for the
Mhm.
job. Somebody gives us the promotion, and the first time you're in a spot where you're like, well, do I get to make this decision? Like, is it
Mhm.
actually up to me? Sometimes it's not obvious
Yeah,
at
yeah,
all.
yeah,
And
100%.
so, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And hopefully you get to make the choice by yourself. Because the other thing that does happen, which maybe is more common, I don't have any data or any statistics, is that you're forced into it. So,
Mm. Yeah.
there's an accident, something happens, your partner comes home and says they want a divorce, somebody gets sick, somebody
Mhm.
dies, you lose your job, and then your back is against a wall, and then you have the addition of like, this is
Mhm.
urgent, this is urgent, this is a
Mhm.
problem, and then it's a whole lot more stress.
It is a whole lot more stress because we're now being reactive as opposed to
Yes.
being proactive. Speaking of being proactive, you finished 7 Iron Women. I'm gonna call them Iron Women because I think
So
that that's
you can. People do it.
okay,
It
good.
doesn't bother
Okay,
me. Like,
good.
so yeah, like, I mean, I use it as the man from Human, like it's like the iron, but call it
Yeah.
whatever you want. Like, because it is a hot topic in the
It
in the in
it
the
it
sport.
is a
So
hot right, it is a hot topic. I actually have a client that's done several of them as
yeah.
well, but you talk openly about the nonlinear, imperfect path of personal growth, and, I not have not done an Ironman, Iron Woman. I've done a very easy sprint triathlon, but I know that my path to training for that was not linear.
Yeah.
I know that there was a lot of back and forth and push and pull. Certainly very proud that I did it, but I think that there's a lot of parallels for life.
So they're
Um,
probably, I mean, I'm always making parallels because I did
yeah,
it, but
yeah, yeah.
it doesn't always land with people who
Well, I get
are
it.
outside of that. And so I'll try to sometimes use parallels from other
Mhm,
industries if they match. And it's especially funny when I'm trying to do that with something I know nothing about. Sometimes it works
mhm,
and sometimes it doesn't. But I think that we have an inclination, most people have an inclination to assume that progress is in one direction. It's just totally linear. Like I'm going to move forward and I'm going to make progress and it's going to
Yeah.
go from there. And and we think that even though that's not really most people's experience with anything. With cooking dinner, with getting a
Mhm.
job, with anything, it's more like the cha-cha. It's like 2 steps forward,
Yep.
3 steps
2 step
back,
back.
2 right,
Yep.
off to the side,
Right,
dodge this,
right.
dodge that. And so through that lens, like triathlon or running or any sort of athletic pursuit is a very, very good metaphor and similar experience
Mhm.
because it's like you've got a finite goal. You've got a very clearly defined goal, which is to finish the race. And
Mhm.
it's so easy to use races as an example because they
Yep.
are so clear to see the finish line. But the way you get there is going to be maybe different, right? Because
Yeah.
the weather's going to change. You're going to have in triathlon, you can have mechanical malfunctions on the
Mhm.
bike,
Or you fall
all
off the
kind of
bike like
you
I did.
fall off the bike, if it's windy,
Yeah.
you're not going to go as
Yep.
fast, right? Maybe
You're
they
not gonna
cancel
go
the
as
swim,
fast.
all of
Yep.
those things. And
Yeah.
so if you hold on to that like really, really tight idea of how something
Mhm.
is supposed to unfold, you can set yourself up to demotivate yourself accidentally because you can
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
frustration and
Mm.
disappointment in the progress. And I think that those things can happen also in life as well. And some of them are really well researched and defined. Like we know that, for example, one of the most researched is when you have a child who develops an illness,
Mhm.
and and they find out when they're a baby, say, like Down syndrome or autism. That is something that's been heavily researched in how the parents can move through adjusting their
Mhm.
expectations for what their life will look like
Right.
as the parents.
Right.
But it's also the same kind of thing. Like if you think you're going to go to work for
Mhm.
a company and work there for 7 years, and that company folds after 2 years, you have to realign and
Mhm.
retool. What are you going to do next? And so, giving yourself the space to hold on to the goal, whatever it is. And life goals are weird because they can just be
Yeah.
happy
Yeah.
and healthy and, so on and
Mhm.
so forth. But loosely holding how you're going to make that happen.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
What has endurance sports what have you learned, I guess, from the long game? Because endurance sports taught me about the long game, about
Yeah.
becoming, and what have you learned from endurance sports?
All right, so I'm going to answer this in a really funny way. So the sports that I do, like, or actually, I haven't done one in a long time. So like the last one was 2018 that I did, but the Ironman triathlon, those races would
Mhm.
take me 6 months to prepare for and
Yep.
14 to 15 hours to finish. They're very, very long races.
Mhm. Yep.
A couple of years ago, do you remember there was a book that came out by Angela Duckworth and it was called Grit.
Mhm. Grit. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so I read that shortly after
Mhm.
I finished an Ironman in Boulder. And the race was really, really hard for me because I am a sea level creature. And when I went to altitude, I thought I had a plan
Oh.
for racing, but I got very
Mhm.
dehydrated. It was a very tough
Mhm.
race, all of these things. And then while I was taking time off after the race, I read this book, Grit, which is all about doing the
Mm.
work and
Mhm.
persevering and sticking to it. And I came into the
Yep.
kitchen and I put the book down. And I was like, "This is a great book, and I think that we all should be working on our grit."
Yep.
And my husband looked at me, and he had just been through this like recovery where I'd pushed myself so far past the boundary that I ever should have been at, and he was just stunned. And he's like, "Are you for real right now?" Like he's like, "I can't believe you're even talking about this.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of grit in your life. Like you've
Mhm.
shown that you have grit, Amy. Like you need less grit. You need to decide when you're going to quit. You need to promise me you're never going to do that again."
Mhm.
And so I learned a lot of things from my pursuit of endurance sport.
Mhm. Yep.
Namely that if I put my mind to it, I can almost always do it. But then the other thing is that there's always the choice, like, is this the decision that I want to make?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
this worth it to me? Am I enjoying it? And is the goal worth it? And I think that's also very, very important for people to,
Mhm.
because sometimes we have to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes the only way out is through and we're going to do it. But other times you can be working really, really hard on something only to discover that it's not what you want to do anyway. So
Yeah.
why should,
Absolutely.
and if there's a choice, it's like, you know what? No, I'm going to stop here and
Yeah.
go do
Right.
something else. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And, I love in the book how it talks about passion isn't just about being excited or
Yes.
enthusiasm. It's really about endurance. And passionate people don't just jump ship easily, right? They're
Right.
willing to stick to their goals for years, even if they keep not reaching them. And I think that this is the thing that we need to be reminded of, that there isn't, a one and done, or you achieve something and that's it, right? Or you don't achieve it and you can just jump off ship, right? But it's
Yeah.
endurance, staying in that race, keep going and analyzing, what am I doing? What is that grit? And how can I leverage it for my life?
Yeah. Yeah. And is it still worth it? Is it still a
Is
good
it
idea?
still worth it?
And I think
Absolutely.
that in a modern context, I think that, like, especially we're talking about in 2025, if people are
Mhm,
listening to this in some other time, I do really feel like we're at a point in humanity or modern times where
mhm.
things are rapidly changing. And
Yeah.
so that, like, sort of self-examination, like, is this
Mhm,
something that is still working, becomes even more important for people. Like, it's like, all right,
mhm.
so, I've been working on this project and I really enjoy it. Does
Yeah.
it actually make sense? Like, does it work? And is it
Mm.
viable? And is it a good idea? And are there clients out there? And does it work? Is where I live where I
Mhm,
still want to live? You grew up in Miami, now you live in a different
mhm.
place.
Yep.
We live in an amazing time where we get to make those choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful that, the community that you're building, the wisdom that you have. And I think that for so many of us, right, we have that inner wisdom community in different ways in which we're showing up in the world, but we're not finding the right place. I kind of feel it's that what do you call it? That Goldilocks syndrome, that,
Yeah.
okay, this doesn't fit, but sometimes we stay in the bed that is too hard, or the chair that, is too small. And I wonder what you can say to the person that maybe is struggling, that is listening to us and saying, I don't even know what the first step is.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. I think that we are alive in a time where there's no
Mhm,
shortage of information and you can have a conversation on video with somebody around the world at any time in the day. And in one hand, that's really wonderful. And on the other
mhm,
hand, and some of this is probably still a legacy from lockdown and recovering,
mhm. Right.
it's almost harder to find community, local community and aligned community than it ever
Mm,
has been before.
yeah. Yep.
And that's really strange. That's a really, really strange
Mm,
phenomenon. And I'm seeing a lot of people working to do it. I think that the first step is like hearing yourself say it. Say, oh, you know what? I am looking for community.
mhm,
And then the next step is gonna be we always think that the next thing, so if you ask, right? If you ask online, if you go in there and
mhm,
ask ChatGPT, they're like, "Go volunteer and find
mhm.
something to do with a group," which is not a bad
Yeah.
idea, but if you're not interested, if you would like to have community without being put into work or labor for
Mhm.
somebody else's organization, there are
Right.
some other things you can do. Maybe you don't know where you're gonna enjoy
Mhm.
enjoy. The
Right.
thing that I think actually is helpful is to, like, say to somebody, start with
Mhm,
yourself, like, "Oh, I'd like community," and then the next time you see somebody, whether it's your kids or your husband or your mom or your neighbor, bring it up in
mhm.
conversation.
Yeah.
Bring it up in conversation
Yeah.
because then, maybe they're gonna invite you to something and maybe you don't wanna go, or maybe they're gonna say, "Me too," or something else, but
Mhm,
the more important part of it is that that is the action step that is going to actually connect you to other people,
mhm,
and that what you're really doing is you are looking for what it is, and along the line, you're gonna figure out what is the type of community and relationship that you're looking for. Are you looking to join
mhm,
a faith group, a hobby group, a volunteer service group? Are you looking to join a running club? Are you looking to join a club of women who are all the same age, learning how to,
mhm.
any of those things? Do you want to go back to school? What are those
Yeah.
things? But you start by asking the question, then telling other people. And it's funny how that little piece of advice works
Mhm,
for a million different things. So I'm giving that in terms of finding community. The same process works if you are looking to change your job. The
mhm.
same
Absolutely.
process looks if you were trying to increase your sales. Like, that
Mhm.
is that is a set of steps that, like, works for a lot of different things.
I love that you
And
said that. Absolutely. I think that, for me, when I moved to Connecticut, I asked my friends, "Hey, where do you volunteer? What are the things that are around?" And I guess for me, because I've moved so many times, right?
yeah,
Between Miami, DC, New York, now Connecticut, right? These are the main places. I think that leveraging the people who I know there and asking the question. And even when I started online, who do you know? When I was writing my book, hey, who
Yeah.
do you know that I can interview to talk about confidence, right? And the
Yes.
same thing happens where I ask whatever it is I may be looking for, or whatever it is that I'm thinking of doing, there's always someone who's willing to share their experience, their wisdom, and that's how we can create support and momentum for
Yeah.
others. And there's someone out there in this whole world that knows the one thing that we want to know. So I think that that's the thing we forget.
I think so too. I will say that you coming from Miami means that you had a skill set that people in other parts of the world may not actually, in other parts of the
Mhm.
country, I'm sorry, may not actually have.
Yep.
Because Miami is a handshake city. It is a city that is built on you need a
Yep.
guy,
You
right?
need a guy. You
You
need a
need a guy.
guy.
If you go to a park, like you go to a
Mhm.
municipal park in Miami, there'll be a beautiful building with a bulletin board that has absolutely no announcements on it. You have to walk in and ask the person, "Hey, what's happening in the park?" I don't know. It's like
That's
the
right.
straight. It's
Nope.
the straight. When are the swimming lessons? They're
Yeah.
not posted.
They're
They're
not
not online.
posted. Yeah,
They're
no.
nothing. You have to do it. And so that, like growing up in Miami, you would have
Mhm.
learned that like that's how we get things done.
Yeah.
It's like there's no sign saying where you do this. You walk in, you're
No.
like, where do I park? How does this work?
Yeah. No, and I think that, even the same thing when I moved here to Connecticut, I didn't okay. Well, I knew maybe 3 women, and they were all the wives of my husband's friends.
Sure.
And fast forward, these women have become my really good friends,
Oh,
but
that's good.
I trusted them to tell
Yeah.
me, "Okay, where do I go for this? Where did people do that?" And really, I was conditioned to that, and
Yeah.
not everybody understands that sometimes you can expect things to kind of be posted or in a big billboard or announced. You are going to have to step out of your comfort zone and ask. But
Yeah.
when you
And
ask, you're
yes.
opening yourself up to the wisdom that can come or the information or the knowledge or whatever
Yeah.
it is that you want to call it.
And there's a payoff. Like
And
if you're
there's a
nervous,
payoff.
if you're
Absolutely.
nervous about doing it, if it feels uncomfortable because we say get out
Mhm.
of our comfort zone and things like that, I always like tell people, I'm like, yeah, the mindset I would have for this is like you are asking for extra sprinkles on your ice cream.
Mhm.
It's like, don't think of it as you're doing something
No.
hard, but it's like, hey,
Yeah.
where is the secret entrance? Like
Mhm.
like give yourself credit for what you're doing because the payoff is there.
Yeah. My mom moved to Connecticut from Atlanta about less than a year ago. It's probably been about 7 months, and we belong to a different church, and she wanted to join the church, but New England is known for churches being very stoic and,
Yes.
not kinda like when you go to Miami and you're walking in and you're like, hi," and,
Right.
you're very no, you don't get that. And I love the communities here, but I really had to work really hard at asking, "Hey, when do people meet? When are the women
Yes.
getting together?" Because even in their little bulletin, they didn't have any information.
Oh
And I
yeah.
had
Yeah.
to really they were having something and I went and I said, "Hey, tell me, when do you guys get together? What about this?" And it's interesting how we live in a world that can give us accessibility to information and give people the ability to get their message out. But we live in a world in which we're not used to that. And that's the world that we live in. And
Yeah.
then we feel like we don't belong because we're not necessarily leveraging what's available to us.
Yeah, and you can be surrounded by people and still feel this. Many years ago, not many years ago, but this was after lockdown, but somebody I knew had moved to a different town and they had joined a run club and they had gone to the run club once or twice a
Mhm,
week for a year, and they were very sad because they hadn't met anybody, even though they were there. Because there are groups that are put together where everybody's
mhm,
together, and sometimes there's somebody who's facilitating. Hey, talk to the person next
mhm.
to you, or we're going to
Yep.
work on this project together. There are other things where you're just in the same space, and so she was really having a hard time because she wanted to make friends, and I made this very controversial suggestion that we were
Mhm,
talking about, like, hey, why don't you tell somebody that
mhm.
you'd like to meet some people in this group, like tell the organizer, tell the person standing next to
Yeah.
you, why don't you start up a conversation? And then she did. She laughed at
Mhm,
herself and she was like, "Oh my god, okay, sure. Yes, I will totally do that." And now like it has expanded and all kind
mhm.
of things like that. But she didn't even realize that what she was doing is waiting for somebody else to do this. And I don't even I want to be very clear. You haven't done anything wrong if you're waiting for other people to do it. Like when we walk
Mhm.
into school in kindergarten, we're not organizing our
Yeah.
play dates, right? We learn
Mhm.
this from the groups that we're in.
Right.
And so nothing has gone wrong, but just yeah, sometimes you just
Mhm.
have to say like, "Hi." And I happen to be one of those people. Why do I have a podcast? Why do I do this? Because I never shut up. I will talk to people who are
Same here.
total strangers
I know.
without even thinking about it. And if you're
Mhm.
near me in a public situation, I'm going to introduce you to me and everybody around you. But
That's right.
there aren't as many of us around that are like that.
No, not at all. And it's interesting because when I first started dating my husband, it used to not drive him crazy, but of course, he's very shy. He's the other spectrum of where I am. He's come a long way. But we would go somewhere and I immediately am talking to people and I'll go to a restaurant and I'm friends with the bartender, the hostess, and know
Yeah.
all the insights. And that's not how a lot of people are. So I
It
think
drives
that
my
yeah,
friend, it drives my
yeah,
kids crazy.
yeah.
They'll be trying to leave somewhere, and I will just hear them, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she's talking to somebody else."
That's right, I hear that all the time from my husband and my mom now, it's like, "Oh god, she's talking to them again." But
Yeah,
that's just
yeah.
part of how I've learned. Now, we were talking about the book Grit, and I kinda wanna
Hmm.
revisit a couple of those themes in there because this kinda ties into confidence, and I know that
Sure.
a lot of individuals feel, and avoid failure, but failure is part of the path, right? And gritty people bounce back. What are some of the setbacks that you've had that you found to be your learning opportunities?
That's a really good question. Let me see if I might have to narrow it down because there are lots.
Well, listen, I got
Yeah.
my whole list too. So,
Yeah, because I've gotten very comfortable over the years in I love to try new things, and to be able to
mhm,
try new things, I have to, for me, and maybe other people are different. I had to very quickly give up the assumption that I was going to start as an expert, and so that did turn into me being ready for the mistakes
mhm,
and the setbacks and the failures,
mhm,
so that I could get better.
mhm,
There's a cartoon that went in front of me like a long time ago, and it was a dad teaching his daughter how to do something, and the wife said, "Oh, that's not going to go very well," and he's like, "No, I think it's not going to
mhm,
start very well, but it's going to get better, right? It's going to get better." And it is hard to do those things. So what are some of the I'll give you so what
mhm.
are some of the recent things that I did? Last week we're going through a birria taco phase in my house.
Oh,
And
yum.
so I bought at Wild Fork, I bought like pre-made birria that just had to be cooked, but I did not read all of the instructions when I started, and I was using the 1 hour time frame for making dinner, and then I started it and it was like, let this cook for 3.5 hours. And I was like,
Yeah.
dinner will be late.
Dinner
Or it
will
will
be late. Yeah. Ah, funny.
and, so, that's a small foible,
Mhm,
but it could so that's the first one that comes to mind. I have gotten very comfortable at resetting, and the other thing that I've gotten very good at is that I like to tell people when I'm a beginner at something.
mhm,
So like a couple years ago, I took up scuba diving, and I would now when we book to do scuba
mhm,
places, I will just say, "Hey, I'm a beginner." Or coming from Miami, like when I go to some place where there's snow, like so I
mhm.
went snowboarding with my son, and we were in Colorado, and the guy's like, "Hey, do you need any help?" And I was like, "Yes, I need all of the help because I'm 50, I'm a beginner, and I'm
Yeah.
from Miami. So assume that I know
No,
nothing.
nothing. Yeah.
I am not going to be offended if you tell me even the
Mhm,
most basic things." And he just laughed. He was like, "Okay,
mhm.
you have
Yeah.
on too many layers." And I was like, "I don't believe you because I'm cold, but I'm going to take your word for it."
But yeah, that's right. It's interesting that we're having this conversation, Amy, because earlier today I got up in the morning and I started to do a little bit of a yoga flow. And of course, high achiever, always judging myself. So I have to catch myself doing that. And I thought, ugh, I can't believe I am this is where I am. And oh, okay, I need to start getting better. And I was just swirling in this like poo-pooing myself for my effort. And then my husband called. I came to the office. He needed me to find this document. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So I'm looking through the files. No lie. Hold on. Let's see. Was it? No. I don't know, it's here somewhere. I basically found this envelope and I opened it because it said Julie DeLucca-Collins. And I'm like, what is this? I open it and it's, oh my God, I don't want to get emotional about this, but it's my certificate as a 200-hour certified yoga teacher.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
I thought, there was a time I couldn't even bend down. And I worked consistently. I failed a lot and I got there. And if I was able to do it, I may not be very fluid today and I may not be practicing every day, but I got there. And I think that sometimes it's so easy to get bogged down with what we're not doing as we think we should. But we have the ability, and even if we fall off the practice,
Yeah.
the opportunity to get there, or even if it's a different place, there's always an opportunity to go forward, but never, stay stuck.
The other with physical things, sometimes that becomes a circle, right? So, like, my father-in-law
Right.
is 90,
Oh, God
and
bless him.
he is currently he's still really active,
Mhm.
but he is reconciling with the fact that he's 90. He had some tests done. He's got some discomfort in his body, which is
Mm.
normal at 90. He had some tests done,
Right.
and the
Yep.
reports all started with, "At your advanced age, this is normal." But,
Yeah.
he is really struggling with the emotions behind,
Mhm.
that right now he wants to be able to play more pickleball than he
Mm.
is, and he can only go for a few minutes without discomfort. And so sometimes I call that moving the goalposts. So
Mhm.
sometimes when we have an expectation for ourselves that really sometimes we do need to move the goalpost.
Yeah.
Like, like, is it reasonable for me to think that I'm going to run the same 5K time I ran when I was 17? No,
Mhm.
it is
Yep.
not. Let
Yep.
me just tell you, Julie, it is not. I'm
Mhm.
never going to see that time ever again. And so with yoga, it's like, and with the physical things, and I think those are tricky. I think those are really, really hard, especially because there are these social media things out there where it's like, this guy is 100 and he's doing 500
Yep.
hours of yoga and 300 sit-ups and he only looks like he's 25. And it's like, wow, not my
Yeah, good for
experience.
him, right?
Right. Exactly. My knees hurt. Ouch. Like, yeah. So,
And I think that, this is so key, right? Of staying in your lane. And I often talk about in the example of when I did my triathlon, I jumped
yeah.
into the pool. Well, first of all, I'm not a strong swimmer. And when they asked us to rate ourselves, because it was in a pool, I'm like, okay, well, I'm a 6 because I didn't want to give me the 5. But I thought, am I a 6? I don't know. Maybe I'm a 4. And I kept going back and forth. So they lined us up and based on our ability around the pool, and all these women are going, and when they started, the gun went off. The first women that jumped into the pool, they were beasts. They were like,
Yeah. They were ready to
and
go.
I'm looking at them like, I'm gonna drown.
Yeah.
And I thought, and I was so all of a sudden, and I don't usually get really nervous or,
Yeah.
panicked. And I did. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. And my girlfriend said, honey, those are the marathoners. We're not the marathoners. We're in the middle of the pack. And it made me feel better. And as I
Yeah.
jumped into the pool, I had my little groove going. I'm swimming. But as soon as I started to look at the people next to me, all of a sudden, I lost my groove. I'm, like, paddling, and I
Yeah.
lost my speed, and that's what happens to us in life. Every time that we're focusing on what somebody else is doing or comparing ourselves to the next person, we forget who we are, we forget our groove, we forget the
Yeah.
momentum that we've built, and then we're not giving ourselves credit for the things that we are able to do.
Right, and
So,
that
yeah.
comparison can be a past version of ourselves or a dream that we think of where
Yeah.
we should be, like, so it's like, I
Mhm.
should be further along.
Yeah,
I had panic in a
100%.
swim I had panic in a swim in a triathlon in a lake, and this story won't make any sense to people who haven't done it, but because it involves a conversation in the middle of a body of water. I was
Mhm.
racing with my brother, and I was really panicking, I don't know, side stroking, whatever, and he started behind me, and he swam up, he's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't know, I'm really struggling, I don't think I can swim," and he's just like, "You are swimming, like, right now, you are swimming," and I was like, no. He's like, yeah, you can swim. He's like, you are swimming. And I finished the rest of the swim just like, I can swim. I can swim. I can swim. But it's so funny that he like gave me that realignment. He's like, you actually are swimming right now. So you can answer that question for yourself. Like, can you swim? You
Mhm.
are swimming.
Yeah, you are. Sometimes we need that. We need somebody to come alongside us and do that. In your coaching work and your podcast, what themes do you see women returning to again and again, even if the circumstances look totally different?
So one of them is the secret rule book path that you're unaware of. The rules you're holding yourself to without any
Yeah.
acknowledgement of the fact
Mhm.
that they're there. That shows up in so many different ways. And then the other one is the sneakiness of overwhelm and burnout.
Mm,
So like having the symptoms of something that you're withdrawing, you're tired, you're fatigued. Maybe you spend a
right.
year going to doctors. You're ruling out physical causes. Maybe it just shows up all over the place.
Yeah.
And it turns out that what you've done is, what we've done is we've put ourselves in a position where we are of service to too many things and not taking care of ourselves. And so
Mhm.
those are things that show up a lot, and I don't think they're easy to find.
Yeah.
I think that this is one of the ways that community is really needed in modern time. Community that is a safe space to say, "Oh, by the way, I see you're working really hard. Could you be overextended?" And then you think,
Yeah.
"Oh, could
Yeah.
I be overextended? Like,
Yeah.
like is that the thing?"
Mhm.
Or having a variety around you where you see people changing what they're doing. You're like, wow, why did they get to do that? And maybe I can too. So that's those are the two things that I see showing up a lot.
Mhm.
And then there's, there are things underneath that because both of those tie down into like, how do we define our identity? When do we give
Mhm.
ourselves permission to change our identity?
Yeah.
Where does, self-compassion and confidence come from? Having the confidence and the courage to do
Mhm.
these things is
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. I know that for me, Amy, my version of success has definitely changed from my 20s to my 30s to now in my 50s. And how has it changed for you? And or has it evolved?
Oh,
And,
yeah. But I'm right in the
what is
middle of
it?
a big
Yeah.
change, because I'm
Okay.
about to be an empty nester.
Okay.
My primary goal as a stepmom and as a mom has been for a long time to not ever look at a news document and see anybody in my family described as Florida man. And so now that I'm about to be an empty nester, that is a joke. That is a
That
joke,
is a joke. Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
also is very true because we have the weirdest news headlines ever
You
here.
do. You do.
And, like, so it's like, never, so raising these people being a part of the team, that was
Mhm.
a goal. Everybody, keep everybody alive and out of the newspaper.
Mhm.
And now I've got young adults, and so that's a transition for me. But success in that phase of caregiving of kids was
Mhm.
really, really defined in that sort of lens. Like
Yeah.
everybody's happy, everybody's fed, and I'm intentionally over the years. And I did it to myself on purpose, and I don't regret it. But I did prioritize the happiness of the family and the
Yeah.
joy of the family and the people in the family
Mhm.
very frequently above mine. And so I'm very excited to be focusing
Mhm.
on my new project, The Art of Imperfect Adulting, on a professional
Love it.
set, the joy, doing some travel where I'm not
Mhm.
dragging, small children
Yeah.
around. The idea of not making a family dinner for everybody every single night
Mhm.
lights me up in a way,
Love
Julie, that
that.
I can't even, I'm just so excited.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, it's definitely I've seen a lot of my girlfriends go through this in the last couple of years. Some of them have become empty nesters and they it was sort of like learning new steps to an old dance,
yeah, yeah,
because things were still happening and going on, but they had to do it differently. Like I don't have to cook for the whole family, or guess what? I can plan something for myself without having to see like where are they? What do they need a babysitter?
yeah.
Do I need to
I
make
don't
dinner?
have to, I can
All of that.
travel
Yeah.
outside
Yeah.
of the school calendar. You
Mhm.
have no idea. It's like I
Yeah.
feel like I've won the lottery.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop this kid off at school and I'm going to go to the Grand Canyon. And one of my kids
Yep.
was like, "Well, I'd like to go. Will you reschedule?" And I was like, "No, I will
No,
not. I might have to reschedule that because there's a huge fire in Arizona, but
that's
that
what I
was the
heard,
plan."
yeah.
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 But they were like, "Can I go?" And I was like, "No, you're busy and you're not invited."
Yeah. Love that.
They would of course be invited, but I
Yeah.
like, I love to spend time with my kids and the people in my family, but It's hard to only plan and travel
Mhm.
in when everybody else is traveling, and so, yeah.
Mhm. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, I have one last question for
Yeah.
you. You've been incredibly gracious with your time. What is one imperfect truth, about you that you're proud of and that you own today?
An imperfect truth about me, like, as a person, something that I
Yeah,
know that is
yeah.
imperfect about me. So this is kinda hilarious, I'll share this because I handle, as with the guesting and the podcasting, all of these things, and the big family, I handle very complicated calendars and scheduling and all of these things.
Mhm.
The actual truth is that I'm terrible with calendaring data, and I have been.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, I have
Okay.
been since I learned this when I was first in an office and I would do things, that had a schedule, and people would when I had a secretary and people would try and skip the secretary and come to me to make an appointment, I'd
Mhm.
double book myself.
Yeah.
I rely so heavily on the scheduling software and Google Calendar.
Mhm.
Anytime I go in and messing that up with myself, like if we
Yep.
set up this
Mhm.
appointment manually and you confirmed it 27 times and it wasn't done through a scheduler
Mhm.
and on my Google, I'd never be here. I'd
Yeah.
totally mess it up.
Well,
I
you know me.
double book
I
my
was just I do that too, so
I double book myself
Yeah.
so many times, and, like, I'll just be like, "Wow, am I supposed to I don't know." Yeah, so
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is something that is really something that I am
Mhm.
really not actually very good at, and it makes me laugh all the time because since I was 20, I've been in charge of huge travel calendars and complicated things, and if you were to list it in my strength zone, I would be like, "I don't know where that goes, but it's not mine."
Yeah, this is why when people wanna be on the podcast, I'm not allowed to send them the calendar link or the intake form because I always mess it up, and I it's a very detailed thing, and you know what? I would like I say, do what you do best,
Yeah.
delegate the rest, and then you'll be fine. It's such a pleasure to have you here, Amy. I've
Thank you very
had so
much,
much fun
Julie.
talking to you. How do people find you? Where do they connect with you?
So I'm in all the places. I do my best. So my name is Amy Stone. The name of my company is actually Amy Says So. The name of the show and the latest project is The Art of Imperfect Adulting. Very imperfectly, it has slightly different social handles in all of the places, but the website is imperfectadulting.com. Instagram and YouTube are the places where most people connect with me. So it's Imperfect Adulting on YouTube and The Art of Imperfect Adulting on Instagram.
Amazing. Well, I'm gonna make sure that I'm following you in all the places, and I can't wait to see what amazing things, you continue to do in this world. You know, you have an open invitation to Casa De Confidence, and I can't wait to see you in person when I'm in Miami next.
Yay. Thank you.
Okay, amazing. Everybody go connect with Amy. Go give her some social media currency. Tell her you loved whatever piece of this episode you loved. Tell her we loved hearing from individuals. And most importantly, if there's something that you loved, if there's something that really kind of hit home for you, I know there's someone in your life that also will benefit from hearing this. So share this episode or leave us a review so that more people can find the podcast. You will be surprised. Most of the people listening are not subscribed, and we would love for you to do so. So until next time, my friends, don't forget, go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Bye, Amy.